When you hear AI, you probably think of things like self-driving cars, right? Or maybe algorithms on Wall Street. But what if I told you one of its biggest breakthroughs is happening in a fish farm? Today, we're looking at a new AI standard that isn't just tweaking the aquaculture industry, it's completely redesigning the concept of a meal from the ground up. So, to really get why this is such a huge deal, you've got to understand the pressure fish farms are under. It's what we can call a triple threat. First, the cost of fish feed is just out of control. Second, the risks are massive. I mean, one bad day, one sudden temperature shift, and you could lose your entire stock. And on top of all that, environmental regulations are getting stricter every year. It's a perfect storm, and it's screaming for a smarter way to do things. And look, the data from a nearly 3-year study shows just what a dead-end farmers were at. You could go with traditional raw feed, sure, you'd get high growth, but the cost and waste are just totally unsustainable. We're talking 5 times more feed. Or you could use a simple automated feeder. You save some money, but the fish barely grow. It's this classic choice between going broke fast or going broke slow. Neither is a real solution.
So you've got these two bad options, and it seems like the problem is just cost versus growth. But some researchers started asking a really interesting question. What if all of that is just a symptom? What if the real thing that's been crippling these farms has been hiding in plain sight the entire time?
And that question led to a huge discovery. The real enemy wasn't just high temperatures or feed costs or even disease on its own. It was one simple, powerful concept: volatility, the sudden, rapid change in the water.
Yeah, see, when they dug into the data, they found a shocking pattern. The deadliest days on the farm weren't necessarily the hottest days. They were the days with the biggest swing in temperature from morning to night. That sudden change, that volatility, puts the fish's metabolism into shock, especially if they've been consistently overfed. It's an invisible killer that no one was even tracking.
And this quote just says it all, doesn't it? It perfectly captures the flaw in the old mindset. For years, the industry was obsessed with one thing: how do we feed more to get more growth? But it turns out, the real genius, the real trick, wasn't about pushing the accelerator. It was about knowing when to hit the brakes. The industry just didn't have a system smart enough to say, whoa, stop, not right now.
So, how do you fight an invisible killer like volatility? Well, you build an intelligent defense system that can see it coming. The solution is this multi-layered shield that works with the fish's natural biology, not against it. It's called the 3-phase AI defense system.
Now, before we get into the tech specs, you have to get the philosophy behind it, and it's actually really simple and intuitive. Instead of just dumping food on a fixed schedule, the system has a 2-step logic. First, calculate the fish's natural digestive cycle, its biorhythm, using science. And second, use an AI camera to visually confirm that the fish is actually hungry and wants to eat. You know, it's the difference between a blaring alarm clock and a personal chef asking, "Are you ready for your meal?"
Okay, so that philosophy gets put into action in 3 distinct phases, and each one acts as a safety check for the next. First up, you've got the environmental safety lock. Then comes the physiological scheduling, and the final green light is the AI activity trigger. Let's break down how this defense actually works. Phase 1 is basically the emergency brake. Before a single pellet is dropped, the AI looks at the environment in real time, and it's hunting for that invisible killer, volatility. If it detects a big swing, specifically if the water temperature changes by more than 2 degrees Celsius in a single day, boom, the whole system locks down. No food is released. That one move prevents that deadly metabolic shock.
All right, so let's say the environment is stable, the coast is clear. Now we get to phase 2, which is all about biology. This phase is built around a scientific principle called gastric evacuation time, or GET for short. It's basically a proven formula that calculates exactly how long it takes a fish to digest its food based on things like the water temp and how fatty the meal was. This is the hard science that makes perfect timing possible.
So, using that GET model, the system throws out the old 3 meals a day idea. Instead, it creates a flexible schedule based on the fish's actual digestion. It calculates the exact moment the fish's stomach is about 80% empty, and it schedules the next meal for that specific time. If the water's colder, it waits longer. If the last meal was rich, it waits longer. It's feeding that's perfectly synced to the fish's own rhythm.
Okay, now this is my favorite part. Even if the environment is safe and the biological clock says it's time to eat, the system still doesn't release any food. It does one last check. It's a hybrid check. The AI is asking 2 questions at the exact same time. In one column, you've got the theory. Is the GET schedule good to go? And in the other column, you've got the action. Is the AI camera actually seeing the fish swimming around looking for food? Only when the answer to both is a clear yes does the feeder turn on.
So you've got this incredibly smart three-layered system. It respects the environment, it respects biology, and it confirms behavior. The theory is fantastic, but does it actually work in the real world? Well, let's look at the results, because this is where the innovation really speaks for itself.
This table just lays it all out nice and clear. Conventional methods, they decide when to feed based on a timer or just, a gut feeling. The AI standard uses a combination of hard data and real-time behavior. Feeding amount? The old way was basically, keep dumping it in. The new standard uses precise microdosing. But the biggest difference is risk response. The old way was reactive. You stop feeding after you see dead fish. The AI standard is proactive. It locks the system down before the danger even has a chance to strike.
So what's the bottom line? Well, it directly tackles that triple threat we started with. By stopping waste, it slashes feed costs. By preventing that metabolic shock, it crushes the mortality risk, and because every pellet is eaten, it massively reduces the farm's environmental footprint. It's a win, and another win.
Let's put a hard number to that efficiency, because this is a big one. It's called the feed conversion ratio, or FCR. Basically, it's how many kilos of feed it takes to produce 1 kilo of fish. Lower is always better. The industry average is floating somewhere between 1.8 and 2.5. This AI standard gets it down to 1.2. That's not just a little better. That is a revolutionary leap forward.
And what about that risk factor? That sudden die-off that can bankrupt a farm? The whole point of this system is to target a risk of 0 for what's called acute digestive mortality. It's designed to make one of the biggest financial nightmares for farmers a thing of the past.
So, what's the big takeaway here? This is so much more than a cool new gadget for fish farming. It's a fundamental shift in thinking. It's about moving away from the old art of farming and into the new science of ecology.
And I want to leave you with this idea, because I think it captures everything perfectly. For decades, aquaculture was a skill, the skill of pushing for faster growth. But in our world, with rising costs and a volatile environment, the future isn't about skill. It's about the science of survival. And by listening to biology, this AI isn't just feeding fish better. It's building a smarter, more resilient way to feed all of us. And it makes you wonder, what other industry is just one scientific breakthrough away from its own revolution?